Okay, so welcome to today's session. Today we're going to be talking about speed work and hill work. And I'm here together with James, who is a very talented marathon runner and a World Guinness record holder. So, James, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. So I'm from England, but I live in Taiwan. Currently back in England right now, though. So I mostly do half marathons. I'm a 70-minute half marathon runner, but I've raced everything from 800 meters up to a marathon distance as well.
Perfect. So we'll dive right into today's topic then. So, James, what is interval training?
Yeah, so interval training is basically short periods of high intensity effort separated by short recovery or low intensity phases. So for instance, some of my go-to training sessions are 10 lots of 400 meters with 60-second recoveries, or 8 lots of 800 meters with 90-second recoveries, 5 lots of a kilometer or 1,000 meters with 90-second recoveries, or 4 lots of 1,600 with 400-meter jog recoveries. Typically, you'll want to be running between 1 minute to 10 minutes per repetition, with 1 to 3 minutes of recovery in between each set as well.
And why would you say that interval training is so effective?
So one of the key things with interval training is it kind of maximizes the time spent at or near your VO₂max, which is the key zone for improving your aerobic power. So obviously, when I was new to running, people would be throwing all these terms at me, and I didn't have a clue what it meant. So when I say VO₂max, that's basically the maximum or the optimum rate for your heart, lungs, muscles, to effectively deliver and use oxygen during your exercise. So it essentially gets your body to adapt and become more efficient with that. And it also helps your body to improve to clear lactate as well, which is particularly in races when you're running at fast pace, or running longer. The longer into the race you go, the more tired your legs will become, and once you kind of hit that lactate threshold, it can then be difficult to maintain your pace. So this helps with that, and as a consequence of that, it also delays the onset of fatigue. So essentially, it helps to build your speed and your endurance by training the cardiovascular and the muscular system to handle greater workload more efficiently.
Perfect. How do you feel when you start to feel like the lactate is building up, and how do you know that it's effectively working?
Yeah, so actually, one of the easiest ways to kind of explain that is, when a lot of new runners first do interval training, and they're really new to it, your first few reps, the first few laps that you do, most commonly, a lot of runners will go way too hard and way too fast for the first few, and once your legs then start to feel really heavy, there's not really much you can do about that. You can't really then recover, and that's down to the lactic threshold. That the lactic in the muscles. But then once you kind of build that, maintaining the same pace throughout your session, so not like starting too fast and then absolutely dying at the end. You maintain the same pace throughout. And then as the weeks go on, this isn't something that you're going to feel the benefits of immediately. It might be an 8 to 12 week training program, of consistent training, doing your interval sessions. And then as you progress through those 8 to 12 weeks, you will start noticing that your legs will feel a lot fresher, and you can last a lot longer with these sessions before that kind of fatigue and tiredness takes over.
Perfect. And like, what would you, because there are two types of interval trainings, right? There's the VO₂max intervals and threshold intervals. So would you be able to break these two down and explain what the main difference is?
Yeah, so the VO₂max intervals, that's pretty much where you're running at 90 to 95% of your maximum heart rate. So the purpose of the VO₂max intervals is that will help to increase your aerobic power. So that's your body's capacity to deliver and use oxygen. So these sessions tend to be a little bit shorter than your threshold intervals. So shorter, but also faster. So you're looking perhaps 1 to 3 minutes, or up to 5 minutes of effort per rep. So going back to what I said, were my kind of go-to sessions, things like 10 lots of 400 meters, or 8 lots of 800 meters. So shorter, faster sessions. So that's your VO2. They'll feel hard. Again, one thing that I was saying, a lot of new runners doing interval for the first time, your first couple will feel easy. So you might be tempted to think, oh, I can go a little bit faster. I can go a little bit faster. But then by the time you get halfway through the session, you're really struggling to hold on to that. Yes. And it's one of them. Yeah. So you're going to be, pushing yourself really to your limits there. And yeah, in terms of your recovery, it can be something like equal to your effort. So if, for instance, you're doing 800 meters, I would typically be doing it at 230. Sometimes 220, sometimes 240. Depends on how many repetitions I'm doing. But you can do equal amount of recovery to the amount of effort that you're putting in. So if I'm doing 230s, you can have a 230 recovery. But what I'd like to do myself is I tend to go for the shorter recoveries. So I will tend to have 60 seconds to 90 seconds recovery, because that will help. One of the things that will help with is it will ensure that you're pacing yourself a bit better. Your recovery time's not as long, so you're not going into each rep feeling completely fresh. So that will keep you more at a steady pace as well. And obviously in races, you're not going to have 3 to 5 minutes to recover in between, like when you're running. So it kind of helps with that recovery rate, as improving your recovery rate. So that's your VO₂max. And then your lactate threshold intervals, that tends to be more, 80 to 90% of your heart rate. So rather than 90 to 95, it's a little bit lower. And these tend to be your more longer sessions. So, you might be looking at 8 to 20 minute intervals. So 3 lots of 10 minutes at threshold pace, with a 2-minute jog recovery in between. And then, so the benefits of this one is that improves your aerobic efficiency and helps you to sustain your race pace. So, VO₂max intervals, as I was saying, if I'm doing 800 meters, I'll be looking at 230 per kilometer, per 800. Yeah, so 230. And then if I'm doing a kilometer, I'll be going at about 3 minutes per kilometer. But my half marathon pace is 3:20. So, it's going a bit faster than your race pace. Whereas these threshold sessions, tend to be a little bit closer to your race pace, and that helps you to sustain that race pace.
So then the threshold ones, you would go at 320 approximately.
Yeah, 320, or if I'm focusing more on 10K races, then I might go a little bit quicker. Or if I'm trying to push myself to improve my time, I might aim for, say, 315. But yeah, generally you'd be looking at race pace or a lot closer to race pace. Certainly wouldn't be trying to go out at 3 minutes per kilometer for those.
And do you alternate between the weeks if you do a threshold or a VO2 interval, or how do you structure your training in terms of this?
Yeah, so the way that I tend to do it is, when I first started intervals, I was focusing more on the threshold intervals to begin with, because you wanted to build up that base fitness to begin with. And that's when you can then start introducing more speed work. But then as I increased my mileage over the weeks, I found that it was more beneficial to me to do 2 sessions per week. So, I've gone through my training. So on a Monday would be an easy day. Tuesday would be an interval session. So I would perhaps do a VO2 interval session on the Tuesday. Wednesday would be a recovery run. Thursday would then be a threshold session or a hill session. But we can come on to hill sessions later. And then Friday would be another recovery run. And then Saturday, Sunday, that would either be a rest day and a long run, or another faster session and a long run. So I would generally do one of each in the week. But then sometimes I will combine the 2 together. So for instance, I done a track session last night where it was a 10 minutes kind of threshold run, tempo run, followed by 20 lots of 200 meters with recoveries, with another 10-minute threshold tempo attached on at the end at kind of race pace.
Okay. So beginning like 10 minutes tempo, intervals, and tempo to end.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I haven't tried that setup.
Yeah, so it's one of those where you can play about with it. So you can have them as separate sessions, or you can combine them together.
I'll try it in my next session. And can you talk a little bit more about how the recovery looks like between the intervals? Like, would you recommend to do jogging, walking? How fast should jogging be? And in terms of speed as well.
Yeah, so that's one where different people have different preferences. So, myself, I've trained with running clubs in Australia, in Taiwan, in Korea, in England, and each group that I train with, they have different approaches. So some of them will have a standing recovery, others will have a jog recovery. Personally, I prefer a jog recovery. Part of that is especially when you're in the winter months, because if you're doing a standing recovery, your muscles are then getting colder. So then when you're doing your next rep fast, you're increasing your chances of a muscle injury there. So that's one of the key reasons why I like to keep an active recovery. So just a very, very slow jog. And the other key reason why I like to have an active recovery, and this is something that one of the running coaches that I was being trained in Melbourne in Australia, he was always saying to me that, when you're doing a race, you don't have a period of not running, you don't stop and stand still. So even if it's just a slow recovery, a slow jog, it's good practice to just keep moving. So that's something that kind of stuck with me. So my personal preference is to do kind of a slow jog recovery. not necessarily a set distance. So, sometimes if you're going based off time, you just want to, jog up and down for 90 seconds to then be in place ready to start your next rep. Other times I will do the recovery based on distance. So I might do a 1 lap of a track 400-meter jog recovery, and then do the next set. So I tend to do that more for the longer reps. So if I'm doing, say, 1600-meter reps or 2 kilometer or 3.2 kilometer, I'll do a 1 lap jog recovery in between them.
Okay. No, I'm also mostly doing jog recovery. Now thinking back, so I think it's a preference for most people. But and what about the intervals per session? Let's say it's someone starting out to do their intervals. How many would you recommend to start with, and how should you gradually increase the amount of intervals?
Yeah, so personally for myself, I kind of go more off a distance rather than a number of repetitions. So, it's one of those where if I'm doing 400 meters, my number of repetitions is going to be different to if I'm doing 800 or 1,000 or 1,600. So I think variety is quite good for your interval sessions. It can get a bit boring if you're doing the same set every single week. So personally, I tend to go a little bit more based around your distance. So I would generally say you'd be looking at about 4 kilometers for your reps. So as I say, 10 lots of 400, that would be 4,000 in total. Then my other go-to session being 5 lots of 1,000, so that's 5,000, 5 kilometers per session. And your 1,600s, I will often do say 3 or 4 of those. So you're kind of looking between 4 to 6 or 4 to 7 kilometers per session. But yeah, it's one of those, again, where particularly if you're new to doing interval training, then you will want to start with shorter sessions and then gradually build those.
I think we talked about this last time, that like a good way to start testing it as well in your regular runs to implement strides.
Yes.
So even just doing 100 meters of sprint, let's say times 10 by the end of your easy runs, I think that's a good way to make your body used to the load before you actually go to the track.
Yeah, and I mean that's something else. That can help make it build the confidence as well. I remember back when I first went to a track, I'd never run on track before, and then suddenly I'm surrounded by all these people just sprinting past super fast. And I wasn't a fast runner when I first started, so it was a little bit daunting seeing all of these runners sprinting so fast and me thinking, well, I'm really slow, I'm going to get in the way, or I don't really know what I'm doing. So it's one of those where if you incorporate strides into your normal runs, and that can certainly be a benefit and help build your interval efficiency and also your confidence as well. So that's a great suggestion there, Moa.
And what about hill training? Can you explain a little bit what it is and how you would do it typically?
Yeah, okay, so again, the hill training, that's something else where I never actually used to do hill training up until last year.
Same.
So it was only when I went to Australia and I started training with the Richmond Harriers in Melbourne, and their coach, a guy called Bill Peterson, really great coach. He'd explain everything pretty thoroughly, and he used to get me to do, rather than doing 2 track sessions per week, he would get me to do 1 track session and then 1 hill session as well. So one of the key reasons he would be getting us to do hill sessions is you're obviously running slower on the hills because you've got the incline, but you're still putting in the same amount of effort as you would if you're on the track. But just that, running that little bit slower will reduce the impact on your muscles, so it'll put less stress on your joints compared to the flat track session. The incline also naturally promotes mid to forefoot striking, so landing on the front of your feet rather than on back of your feet. So it generally puts less stress and less pressure on your joints, which reduces your injury risk. So that was one of the key reasons. But the other good thing about doing the hill sessions is it boosts your speed and your power. One thing that I found that it really helped for me is your posture as well. I found that after running the hill sessions, I was running a lot more straight. My core felt a lot stronger from doing the hill sessions as well. So yeah, they're kind of the key benefits of the hill sessions, but it also helps to develop your muscle strength and your power and your running economy. And obviously the other benefits as well, when you're doing a race, it's not going to be as flat as a track. You're going to have a few climbs here and there. So if you've incorporated hill training into your your weekly training, then it just gives you that little bit more confidence to tackle those hills on race day as well.
And then when you go and look for this hill, which incline do you say is the sweet spot? Because it shouldn't be too steep and not steep, right?
Yeah. So I'll use the example of which is my go-to hill session in Taiwan. I'm fortunate that where I live, you've got mountain roads on your doorstep. So I found a hill that I like, a mountain road, and I stick to that one. There's plenty of different hills on that mountain road that you can play about with it, and you can do different sessions and mix it up a little bit. But my go-to session is there's a 650 meter climb at 6%. So I will do that at 65% effort. And then there's 150 meters flat. So I will do that as a slow jog recovery. And then the next climb is 450 meters at 10% gradient. And I will do that one at about 80% effort. So it's not the same effort throughout. The first one is a little bit lower effort because it's a longer hill. And then the shorter, steeper one, I tend to go a little bit faster for that one. And then I will jog back down to the... Sorry?
Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, so that was one that, I kind of had discussions with the running coach that got me onto hill sessions. And he said that doing it that way helps you to be able to maintain your pace throughout the session. And, that's 650 meters at that kind of gradient. It's quite tough to go kind of flat out for the whole of it. So going for the slightly lower effort for that helps you to maintain the pace for the whole 650 meters rather than getting halfway up and then just completely crashing and burning. So it just helps you to maintain that pace for the duration of the set. Yeah.
And I think also, something to watch out for when you look for the hills is not to find one that's too steep, because it can lead to stress in the calves and Achilles. So I guess, like me personally, when I look for one, I try to find one that's between 4 to 8%. I'd say that's personally, that's the sweet spot for me. So not too steep, not too flat. And then James, how long would you say that the hill repeats should last?
Yeah, so it's one of those where, so using my example, I would do 3 sets of that. So just trying to do the mental arithmetics in my head there. So that's about 3 kilometers of effort. So it's actually not that long, compared to the track workouts where I'm saying, between 4 to 7. This is just 3 kilometers, but obviously with the incline, you're going to feel those 3 kilometers. It's not necessarily an easy workout. But then what you can do is, as the weeks progress, you can either extend the hill workout, the hills themselves. So you might then find a hill climb that's a kilometer instead of 650 meters. Or you might find that you can do more repetitions instead. So you can build that gradually and add more distance as you go along. But I would generally say, you're looking at about 3 kilometers is what I would do. How about yourself? What would you typically do for the hills?
Yeah, same. I'd say usually my hill works are shorter than the speed workouts. Usually 5 to 6 kilometers in total. And depends on the hill, right? But usually around 10 reps I will do. And then I try to focus on my running form. So really like raising my knees when I go up and swinging with my arms as much as possible. And this is something which I try to take with me on race day as well. Because as you mentioned, like the course is never flat on race day. And there's always that very steep bridge that magically turns up on race day. As the last one we did now in Taiwan. But then I really try to remember how I'm running in the hills to really like move my arms as much as possible, hinge forward a little bit. And I find that really helps in pushing through in the steep areas. So I'd say that's one advice from me. And then how often should these interval or hill sessions be done?
Yeah, so that's the way that I tend to work it is, if I'm doing 2 faster sessions per week, 2 interval sessions, I would generally do 1 VO2 and then either 1 hill session or 1 threshold session. So I would do 1 per week. So yeah, I tend to feel that 2 interval sessions per week is sufficient. Any more than that, then you kind of tend to go off an 80-20 ratio. 80% of your runs tend to be your more slower, steady, easier runs. 20% tend to be your faster runs. So any more than that, you're probably overdoing it a little bit unless you've trained specifically to be able to handle that kind of volume of speed work. So yeah, I would generally be looking at 1 hill session per week, or 1 every couple of weeks, alternating with the threshold sessions.
Perfect. Okay, before we take the last question, are there any questions? Okay, if not, then we'll take the last one for today. What are the key safety and performance tips for interval and hill work?
Okay, so one of the key things is warm-up is absolutely crucial here. So you don't want to just go straight into doing speed work without warming your muscles at first, because if you don't do that, then that's when you're more likely to get a muscle injury. So a hamstring tear or something like that, which is never pleasant. So for a warm-up, you might be looking at 10 to 15 minute easy jog. And then myself, I would do dynamic drills. So things like high knees, and skips, and heel flicks as well. So that kind of and a couple of strides before you start as well. So that just activates the correct muscles to boost performance and reduce the injury risk. So warm up is one thing that is absolutely crucial. Obviously having a warm down at the end for a similar reason. But then another thing that I would say that a lot of people skip, and this is one where my coach in England was, that's when I first started doing prep workouts. He kind of guided me and said, look, when you first start doing interval sessions, the next day, because you're not used to it, you will find that your calves or your hamstrings will generally feel quite sore. So that's something that, if you're not prepared, that you're not expecting, you might not think, you might not realize that that's quite a normal thing. So they are going to feel quite sore. And he always, even now, whenever I go to the track with him, the first thing he says as soon as we finish is, make sure you go for your easy run tomorrow. So that's just one where, even if your legs are feeling really tired, just go out on a super easy run. It could be 5 kilometers at, the most casual pace possible. But it just helps getting the blood flowing through your legs again and just speeds up that recovery. So yeah, that's something else that I'd say is pretty crucial there.
Can I just add something on that? Yeah. No, I do the same thing, but I really emphasize trying to find grass that I do this recovery run on, just because it's a lot easier on the legs, and it kind of acts as a massage for the legs. So I will do.
And do you also do barefoot on the grass?
No. Do you do that?
I don't, but I know that a lot of people that do their, particularly warm-ups, warm-downs, the warm downs and the recovery runs on the grass, they will often do it barefoot. I'm not sure the logic behind it, but I know that that's quite a common thing. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, we try it for next session.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, I think we covered everything for today's session then. Yeah, thank you so much and see you next time.
Okay, cheers. See you next time.